I'm going to tell you the story of how my best friend and I almost got kidnapped. When I was younger, I lived with my aunt and grandma in a suburb. It was one with a neighborhood watch and all the special little things you see in the movies. My best friend luckily lived around the corner, literally, and with all of the safety precautions our neighborhood had in place. Our parents would let us walk to and from each other's houses, as well as just meander around the neighborhood. One day, my best friend, who we will call A, and I decided to take a walk. We turned left from her driveway and started to walk down her road. We turned left again and got about 1/5 of the way down that road when we noticed a van behind us. We didn't recognize it, which was weird because our neighborhood was relatively small and everyone knew everyone. But we just figured it was another kid being dropped off in the neighborhood. We got to where the next road connected to the one we were on and turned right onto it. We were about 1/3 of the way down the road, and A started walking backwards. About a minute later, she got a very confused look on her face, so I obviously asked what was wrong. She said the van that had just passed us went down the road we had just came from again. We brushed it off as weird and kept walking. We noticed a car coming toward us and got to the side of the road so they could pass. As they got closer, we noticed it was the same frickin' van coming toward us again. We immediately knew something was wrong and started walking faster towards my house. We heard a car coming behind us a few minutes later, so I looked behind, and you guessed it, same van. A and I took off sprinting faster than Usain Bolt. We turned onto my road and finally made it in my house. We instantly started sobbing. My great-grandma was living with me at the time and noticed how shaken up we were. Eventually, we were able to get it out. We called the police and they came to question us. They searched the neighborhood but didn't find the guys. I don't know the intentions they had that day, but I know they weren't good. So to the creepy dudes in a van that followed me and my best friend around our neighborhood, let's never meet again. In the past, in my residential neighborhood, I've had cars continuously follow me around on multiple occasions, but never met the driver or anyone else in the car face to face. Until now. Cars would just drive around 2 to 3 or even more times while I was out walking, but those are stories for another time. I live in a place with low crime. Several times I've been followed, but I always made it home safely without them finding out where I live. The most recent encounter was even stranger. Not sure if I'm overreacting, but when I went on my daily walk yesterday, it was raining slightly, but starting to let up. I was barely wet. There are no stores or anything nearby, except houses and a school. Out walking around with my headphones turned to a low volume to be aware of my surroundings, I was near my home and I saw a green truck, a truck I've never seen anywhere before. And before I could walk much further, they started to drive backward and stop right next to me. The guy driving looked ex-military, and the passenger looked like she could be related to him. Anyway, they showed no emotion, then asked bluntly if I needed a ride somewhere. I said no thanks and started to walk again. The guy asked me again, and I said no. He looked disappointed, and the woman then started glaring at me. They left, and I walked a bit more, but went a longer route on my way home to avoid them seeing where I live. Nothing about the encounter was normal to me. Why would a stranger ever have good intentions and want to pick someone up who probably lives nearby in that secluded neighborhood and is more than likely heading home? The nearest store or destination to walk to isn't close. I can pick up vibes about people, and the lack of emotion and glares unsettled me. There's nothing around here, and people just don't pass through. If they don't live around here, since I've never seen them, and I've lived here a long time and walk around every day, why did I see them, and why did they talk to me? It seemed random, but the way they acted was so weird. I hope I was just being paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling they were up to no good. I was recounting some old daycare stories to a friend, which jogged my memory on this incident, so I decided to share it. I used to be a preschool teacher. At the daycare I taught at, in the mornings until 3, I worked with the babies, and then once the elementary school kids arrived, I worked with them. This took place a few months ago. The daycare I worked at had a basketball court at the base of a hill, and it was situated next to a major road. I had taken our 5th graders down to the basketball court, and all was fine. I'm monitoring the kids and occasionally glancing at the road because although we were separated by 2 different fences, a dedicated individual could climb over both. And although the daycare was located in a wealthy area, we did occasionally have some homeless addicts wander into the parking lot. You never know what those kind of people could do. I got distracted trying to defuse an argument that had broken out between a few of my boys, when a few kids ran to the fence and were waving frantically and calling greetings, and so I turned to look, assuming they saw some other teacher leave. Instead, I saw an unfamiliar gray car with the hazard lights flashing. The passenger window was rolled down, and a red-headed woman was leaning over from the driver's side and waving at my kids. I shooed all the kids away, not liking the feeling I got. They all assured me they knew who she was, an old teacher, but from what I had heard about previous employees, I didn't recognize her. But I had only been there for around a year or so. The woman made eye contact with me for a minute, and her smile just dropped. She didn't look threatening, but she looked remarkably unhappy. After what felt like a lifetime, but could only have been a few seconds of her staring at me, she drove off. It felt very bizarre, and so I called an admin over the walkie-talkies we had. My supervisor and the assistant director came a few moments later, and I explained what had happened, and they called over one of the boys who had greeted the lady. He again explained she was an old teacher who used to work there, and that she drove by and frequently stopped on the road to say hello. The director asked him to describe her, and he did. And she frowned and said she'd check the cameras. Later, after closing, The assistant director told me there had never been an employee there matching that description, and that she didn't recognize the car on the cameras. She couldn't catch the plates of the car, so we didn't have much information to give the police. Not to be dramatic, but this story freaks me out because this woman had come by the daycare enough that the kids recognized her and had talked to her several times. It's also unsettling where her car was positioned on the road. We have plenty of cameras filming the entire property, and many of them catch the road, and she was parked in a spot where none of the cameras could catch her license plate. It felt very deliberate because you have to try to avoid our cameras that much. I've since stopped working at this daycare, but still, lady who visits the daycare, let's not meet again.